And Ayodele Ozugbaku is live in our Oka studio. With him is Force Public Relations Officer of the Nigeria Police, CP Frank Mba. Over to you, Ayo.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Veronica. It's 48 hours to that election, and INEC said out of 14 items listed that they fulfilled 12. And by 12 midnight today, the 13th one will be on the front burner. That's the close of all campaigns by political parties. And on Saturday is the conduct of the election proper. And I told you in that package that what is on the front burner is security, security, and security. I have Commissioner of Police, Frank Mba, with me. How are you? Nice to have you on the breakfast show.
Thank you, Ayo. And it's always a pleasure serving.
I saw the show of force yesterday. I went to the Women Development Center, and when they were exiting, I saw the capacity. The chairman of INEC actually described the Nigerian police as the lead. I underline that security agency that's going to lead the election, and they are going to have complementary services by other security agencies. Can you just give us a kind of insight into this?
Well, I think the capturing is apt. The Nigeria Police Force will be playing its fundamental role as the lead or the primary law enforcement agency that will be coordinating security and law enforcement around this election. But we will not be going out all alone. We will not be going out the whole hog alone. We will be having significant support from the Nigerian military, the three arms of the Nigerian military. We'll also be receiving significant support from other intelligence and law enforcement communities, the civil defense, the customs, the NDLE, the road safety, and the rest of them.
Yes, as mentioned.
Yes, we will be working collaboratively here, and of course the intelligence agencies, particularly the DSS, which handles the local components of national intelligence. And so we will be putting up a very robust and common front here to ensure that the Anambra are able to come out and cast their vote, exercise their franchise without let and hindrance. Our fundamental responsibility here will be providing a safe and secure environment for these elections to take place. The Inspector General of Police have promised this country. We've made a covenant with India Anambra that will provide a level playing field. And I want to stress on that. We will provide a level playing field. We will be completely 100% politically neutral. We will be apolitical in every sense of the word. And we will ensure that we do everything possible to provide adequate security, not just for the candidates standing in for the election, but also for members of the public who will want to turn out to exercise their franchise. We'll also be paying very special attention to INEC officials. They are key to the success of this election. So we will provide adequate safety for the personnel of INEC. We will not just stop at the personnel of INEC. We know that without the INEC materials, particularly the sensitive materials, you can have a successful election. So we'll be providing adequate security for the materials that will be used for these elections. Critical national infrastructure like INEC offices are also in our radar. We will also be making sure that election observers, accredited election observers, not rogue election observers, and accredited journalists like the likes of Ayo and the rest of them will ensure that you're able to do your job and do them effectively, because the Nigerians need to be kept abreast of happenings in Anambra State. The world needs to see how transparent and how advanced our democracy has become. And so we do all that, and we will also keep eyes on subversive elements. We will make sure that criminal elements are not allowed to hijack the process. We will protect the weak and the vulnerable from intimidation and unnecessary harassment. And we'll also protect the peaceful Anambrans from violence and all kinds of unlawful application of force by criminal elements. Most importantly, we will also be paying very close attention to our personnel as we are deploying these policemen, as we are deploying those law enforcement officials to police the electoral processes. We'll also be deploying another layer of policing to police our policemen who will be out policing the electoral processes, policing the subversive elements. We will also police them and make sure that their conducts are in line with international best practices. We'll make sure that their conduct are in line with our standard operational procedures. We developed an operational order for this election, and roles and assignments and responsibilities have been carefully analyzed and assigned. We will make sure that our men work within the confines of the law.
Now, when you look at the days before this election, there's this kind of apprehension that people feel that might affect the turnout of voters, that those you describe as subversive elements, they've said that no, people should not come out from one day to the other, and people are, run up to this election, you've had pockets of violence in some areas, especially in Anambra State, and some people might be thinking of even checking out of the state right now before the election.
See, Ayo, we are Nigerians, and we're a very special breed of people. Our politics sometimes can look very turbulent. But you know what? The fact that your flight has run into turbulence does not mean your flight is going down. Otherwise, nobody will fly. Every day you fly, if you're a regular flyer, every day you're on the plane, you will at a point hear a voice from the cockpit telling you your seatbelts should be on, you can't use the toilet at this time, return to your seat, and all that. But just stay glued in your seat and observe those basic rules. Moments after, that same voice will come from the cockpit and say, we are out of the turbulence area. You are advised to keep your seatbelt on, but at this point in time, you can move around, you can use the conveniences, and you can do other things. In the run-up to the previous general election, we had people who even prophesied that election will signal the end of Nigeria.
2015.
We went through it, and Nigeria didn't go down. Anambra State will not go down. Nigeria will not go down. This election will come. This election will go. We will come out stronger, better, more united. Lessons to be learned. We just want to hope that our politicians are also learning. They must learn to de-emphasize violence in the run-up to elections. We have watched over time, and we've seen that there are some, not all, there are some Nigerian politicians that just believe that you need to amass violence for you to win elections. Nigerian politicians must begin to walk away from those culture of violence, those culture of looking for shortcuts to victory. They must begin to inculcate a new spirit of playing politics within acceptable norms. And it is not our desire as a law enforcement agent that in every elections we will spend the kind of resources and energy that we are spending policing our electoral process. We are looking forward to a day where or a time or a period, a season where we get to this country and elections will come, and officers and men of Nigerian police force will not have to be deployed from Kano to Anambra or from Anambra to Kano, and then we'll just, like it happens in other advanced democracies, in some parts of the world, a general election will be going on and life goes on.
Even in Ghana.
You won't even know except someone tells you there's
the working day.
Yes,
just walk
people go about their normal duty. But here we have to literally put a pause on everything, literally freeze all activities in order to face the election.
There's this worrisome trend about our democracy and about our election, that we see politicians that they know now that it's difficult to go through INEC to manipulate the process. Now we now see politicians very close, their aides close to the polling units, distributing money, manipulating the process, and sometimes we do see men in uniform aiding and abetting these people.
Let me say something. When people are determined to circumvent the law, they will go every length to make sure they circumvent the law. Our responsibilities, our duties as members of the police force, whether in Nigeria, whether in Ghana, whether in Cambodia, in South Africa, is to continually make sure that this set of people are arrested and brought to book. No matter how strict the laws are, and that's why you say that there are some countries in the world today where drug is a capital offense. People know, drug peddlers know, drug barons know, yet you still see people heading in that direction. So for us, we just continue to strengthen our capacity to intercept those people, investigate them and bring them to law. But in this particular election, the good thing here is that because it's an off-cycle election, we have sufficient men with sufficient resources. We've done massive deployment, and we have the capacity to contain whatever challenge that might arise. So for me, my warning basically to politicians will be, if you intended to rig this election, if you intended to come anywhere within the range of 300 meters to any polling booth to misbehave, you need to have a rethink, because we will identify you, we will isolate you, and we will make you accountable before the law.
Now, looking at it, across the country now, there's a new trend. People use military fatigue, camouflage like yours, now to perpetrate violence. Now, in Anambra State, some politicians or some people might have gotten people that will be using military fatigue, security uniform, police uniform, and they'll be out there to mix with legitimate police. How do we isolate these people? How do we identify those on election duty?
The honest truth that I accept that, in our preparation to this election, we did what we call security threat analysis. And what you just mentioned is one of the potential threats that we identify in our threat analysis. Of course, other threats we also identify include the potential of money bags trying to compromise systems. We also identify political thuggery and violence. We identify possibility of politicians, their godfathers and their foot soldiers also deploying court members for subversive and other kind of criminal activities. We identified the numerous borders around Anambra State. In the north, you've got Kogi State. In the east of Anambra, you have Enugu. In the west of Anambra, you have Delta Edo. And in the south, you have Imo, I think Abia, and a bit of Rivers. So we've identified these boundaries around the state, And incidentally, some of these boundaries are also water bodies. And so we've done our deployment in such a way that we're able to adequately police these border points and make sure. And then, of course, we also identify, again, because it is an off-cycle election, we know that there will be free hands in these neighboring states. Thugs who are who naturally should be operating in these neighboring states that might be hired and imported here. So we've identified these and numerous other threats that we identify. And the beauty of threat analysis is that when you do a proper threat analysis, you are able to involve a proper, adequate, customized, and tailored to suit security measures. It's like carrying out a diagnosis on your patient. Once you do a proper diagnosis, you're halfway to solving your problem.
So how do we
and so, one of the things we'll be doing, again, is our personnel will be carrying special tags. We intentionally, we're not talking so much about these tags because they will be part of the surprise element in the security architecture of this election. And again, most importantly, like the Bible will say, a good shepherd knows his sheep, and his sheep knows the shepherd. Every good commander, every good DPO, every good unit commander, every good team leader knows his men, and his men knows, and his men know him. So in our deployment plan, in our deployment strategy, we'll be making sure that supervisors are meant to supervise persons and personnel drawn from his own unit. So when you see an infiltrator, when you see an impostor, when you see a pretender, you will easily spot the person. We know ourselves, and the deployment is also done in such a manner that the supervising officers from the military will be taking charge of his men. The ones from the Federal Road Safety will be taking charge of his men. Of course, there will be interoperability in some of these operations.
Some will be real policemen that have been drafted to, that have been with these politicians before. They're real policemen, they're carrying your AK-47, but they don't have your tag, but they'll still be on duty that day.
Ayo, we've got experience policing election. I remember we've been policing our democracy unbroken from 1999. The generation of police officers you have today are officers who have sufficient and adequate experience gathered over the years policing our electoral system. These experiences, we are not going to drop them off by. We're not going to drop them somewhere at the backyard. We will be pulling these experiences and bringing them to bear. And let me tell you what we've always done at the end of every election. At the end of every election, we carry, just as we do threat analysis before the election, at the end of every election, we do a post-mortem of our own performance. It doesn't matter what the press, it matters what the press is saying. But sometimes it doesn't matter what assessment some other persons might give us. We take those ones in good faith. But we also do an in-house post-mortem. And at the end of it, we're able to identify those areas we've done well. We're able to identify our strengths. We're able to identify our weaknesses. Those areas we've done well, we consolidate them to become what we call best practices in managing future elections. And those areas where we've done badly or where we believe we did not measure up to our own expectation, we come up with new modalities for actually improving them. All these will be brought into play in the course of the policing of this election. So, and again, if you listen to the Inspector General of Police, IGP Usman Akali Baba yesterday, he did say very clearly that we'll be scaling down security details
That's the point now.
attached to some of these politicians within the next 24 to 72 hours, and that's real. The next 24 to 48 hours. And on election day, no gun-trotting police officer, no arm-bearing police officer is allowed to accompany any politician to the polling center. That's also part of our best practices. And like I've told you earlier on, we are not just policing this, we will not just be deploying men to police this election. We will also be deploying men from the monitoring units, from the provost marshal, from the X squad, to also police the policemen who are policing the electoral processes. And remember, the Police Service Commission, constitutionally, naturally, traditionally, will also be on ground, deploying their own personnel to also provide another layer of supervision, not on the election per se, but on our policemen. And guess what? Journalists, the likes of you, will also be there, policing the policemen.
Yeah.
The election observers will also be there.
Yes, I
observing and policing the policemen.
About policemen that will aid and abet politicians, that they will be help to distribute money. We see them in uniform. We have videos.
We've got the capacity to check this, and I will tell you, no policeman wants his badge.
We've seen it several.
No police officer wants his rank, would take that risk, because that is that could spell the end of your career. If you're caught, that's certainly
those deployed now,
end of your
have
career.
they been paid their allowances? Because these are the problems we have when they
for
get
this,
to their stations.
For this
they will
election,
tell them that they've not even been paid. So politicians will have to pick up their bills.
For this election, allowances have been paid. Yesterday, I was with the IG when he called the officer in charge of the police accounts and budget, and he stressed the need to ensure that all our allowances of all our personnel are paid. And he actually won these allowances paid even before the commencement of the election. And I personally, after the IG spoke to the officer in charge of our accounts and budget, I also personally took my time to speak to him one-on-one. I spoke both to the Commissioner of Police in charge, I spoke to the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of pay, and they all gave me their words.
So that money bags will not hijack the
They all gave me their words that allowances of our personnel will all be paid. And let me tell you one thing. For this election, IGP Akali even went a step further. Apart from the allowances, the regular allowances that we pay, we are also paying a feeding allowance here. So in terms of monetary value, the cumulative allowances that will be paid for this election is higher than what police officers have been receiving in the past. And we believe that these will all serve as incentive in ensuring that they comport themselves well, they do what is expected of them, and they serve this country with all commitment.
Before I let you go now, what have you done, like after the election now? There's a tendency, maybe when a particular winner is declared, there's a tendency for pockets of violence across some areas. Do you have deployment on ground that people will still stay after the election to secure Anambra State?
We've taken all this into our deployment configuration. When you police an electoral process, you police not just the day of the election. You police the build up to the election. It's like a linear. It's like a line. So you start from the build up to the election. You upscale up to the day of the election, and then you remain on ground significantly to monitor the aftermath of the election, and then the standard order begin to come in phases until you are sure that everything is okay. We don't expect post-election violence, because post-election violence usually comes when electoral processes are manipulated, when there are no transparency, when the will of the people is compromised and sabotaged. We believe working with INEC, working with stakeholders, including the media and the election observers, we believe we deliver to Anambra people a credible election, a free and fair election that will reflect the true will and wishes of the people of Anambra. And once we do that, there will be no post-election violence. That's our target, that's our goal, and that's what we are pushing for.
I want to thank you, Commissioner of Police, First Public Relations Officer Frank Mba, and I wish you the best of luck. Maybe on Sunday we'll do a post-mortem on our own, how everything went down.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure serving.
Over to you, Veronica in Lagos.
Thank you, Ayo, for that insightful interview. Thank you.